morning I wake up to a new headline lying about me.
We have to protect all men in America, especially all white men in America. Those are the boys that we care about in this country.
She said it straight into a camera like she was accepting some kind of award. Composed, deliberate, completely certain of herself. Bold move for a moment that was already deeply and visibly messy. That one word, just one word, whiteface. She tossed Druski a free win without him even having to show up to collect it. And he didn't clock in for a single second. He just kept winning anyway. The skit hit 183 million views. The president reportedly told her to sue him. Druski's response was genuinely wild. He casually announced he was hosting the BET Awards. But here is the specific part that keeps getting missed in the broader conversation. When Erika Kirk swung back at Druski, she didn't actually land on him. She landed directly on herself, and the whole thing played out publicly, loudly, and on her own timeline in front of the entire internet. If you want to fully understand why Erika Kirk's response turned into one of the most spectacular public self-owns of the entire year, you have to understand what she walked into. Because Druski didn't manufacture this situation from nothing. He spotted the heat that was already radiating from every corner of the internet, picked up a mirror, and held it up to 183 million people simultaneously. The raw material was already there. He just knew exactly what to do with it.
I want to know why the decision was made to Charlie Kirk, a decision that very clearly had to be approved by Charlie's friend.
Rewind for context. Charlie Kirk was the founder of Turning Point USA and one of the most polarizing conservative media voices in America. Some people loved him deeply and felt genuinely connected to what he was building. Others couldn't stand him and everything he represented. That's not a moral judgment. That's just the documented reality of being a high-profile political figure in 2025. But after he died, things got strange, very fast. Erika stepped into the public spotlight, like the transition had been pre-planned and pre-scheduled. Interviews, major public appearances, the CEO title announced, a book positioned, and then those entrances. Please welcome Turning Point USA CEO and Chair, Erika Kirk. And right there, in that specific moment, with the music pumping and the pyrotechnics firing, is precisely where the internet made its collective decision. Because if you walk out to full arena-style production effects while simultaneously selling the narrative of a grieving widow turned reluctant leader, people are not organizing to hand you sympathy. They're organizing to hand you to a comedian.
Comedians dressing up in whiteface?
And that comedian was Druski. He dropped a skit called How Conservative Women in America Act. And Druski's entire professional lane is sharp, specific, perfectly calibrated character comedy that finds its target through precision rather than volume. But this time the "who is that supposed to be" question lasted approximately 30 seconds before everyone watching had their answer. The makeup, the vocal cadence, the specific energy, the exact little phrases, it was aimed with surgical accuracy at one person. And here is precisely why it landed with the force it did. Erika Kirk didn't basically say the lines the skit was recreating. She didn't kind of say them. She said them word for word in real recorded speeches that anyone could pull up and compare directly. So, when a comedian repeats your exact words back to you with perfect timing and a completely straight face, that is not defamation. That is a mirror held at an angle you can't argue with. The skit pulled 1.2 million likes and 183 million views on X alone. That is not just viral in the conventional social media sense. That is the kind of cultural moment that embeds itself in the collective memory and gets referenced months later in contexts that have nothing to do with the original.
We have to protect all men in America, especially all white men in America. Those are the boys that we care about in this country.
Then it got considerably stranger and more surreal. At an official press conference during Holy Week, the President of the United States looked directly at Erika Kirk and told her to sue Druski. More than once, publicly and explicitly. Think carefully about what that image actually communicates to the world. The president at a formal government podium, functioning in that moment as essentially a personal hype man for a political figure responding to a comedy skit. And instead of shutting anything down, that moment told the entire watching world one simple and undeniable thing, that a comedy skit had climbed all the way to the top of political attention in America, which predictably made everything explode even further. Every serious institution that touched this story made it significantly bigger than it would have been without their involvement. And Erika Kirk had real choices available to her. She could have stayed completely quiet and let it pass. She could have laughed it off publicly and demonstrated the kind of self-awareness that disarms this type of comedy before it gains sustained traction. She could have simply ignored it and moved on to organizational business.
I have comedians dressing up in whiteface.
But after weeks of silence, she chose to come out on her own platform, on her own terms, and address it directly and formally. And that specific choice handed Druski a second win without him lifting a single finger or producing a single new piece of content. That speech was designed and positioned to make her appear more human, more relatable, more sympathetic, to reframe the public's perception of who she actually is beneath the stage productions and the sequin outfits. Instead, it became the next wave of content in a cycle she was already losing. And it started before she even opened her mouth, because the outfit she appeared in immediately became its own separate and fully autonomous headline. Half the internet said she looked like an Imperial officer from Star Wars. Others said it was giving Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation, like they were genuinely sitting and waiting for a choreographed performance to break out at any moment. Candace Owens, who at this point has essentially established permanent residency in Erika's mentions across every platform, looked almost visibly excited by the development.
Through all of this, truly, having lived through quite literal hell these past 7 months, if you strip someone of their humanity long enough, you will arrive at the chilling conclusion that they don't deserve to exist at all.
The memes multiplied at extraordinary speed. Instead of cooling anything down, that outfit poured a substantial quantity of additional gasoline onto a fire that was already burning completely out of control, generating approximately 10 additional rounds of content entirely on its own before anyone had said a single word. And somehow, the outfit still wasn't even the most damaging element of the appearance. Because then came the word, whiteface. She said it clearly, directly, and without apparent hesitation. And that single word cracked the entire situation wide open, in a way that nothing else could have managed quite as effectively. Because whiteface and blackface are not the same thing. They do not carry the same historical weight. They do not emerge from the same origins. They do not produce the same cultural impact or cause the same category of harm. And treating them as direct equivalents is not just a weak rhetorical move. It is the kind of claim that draws immediate and simultaneous criticism from every direction simultaneously, left, right, and every position in between.
This is why Charlie started Turning Point USA in the first place. He didn't trust the radicalized liberal teacher. You have these people who are supposed to be teaching our children the future of this country, and he's so unhinged that he is able to teach children by day and then attempt to be President of the United States by night. And in his manifesto, he starts by contextualizing himself by saying, "I am a citizen of the United States of America."
What had started as celebrity satire and organizational controversy instantly transformed into a broader and considerably more serious debate about false equivalencies, and Erika ended up firmly and visibly on the wrong side of that specific conversation with no clean path back to neutral ground. And here is the detail that says more about that speech than anything else contained within it. She never once said Druski was wrong. Think about what that absence means. If the skit had genuinely misrepresented her, the natural and obvious response is to identify the specific moments where he got it wrong. You point to what he distorted. You explain what he twisted or fabricated. You demonstrate the gap between the performance and reality with specific and verifiable examples. But she didn't do that, because she couldn't. Because if you place Druski's skit directly alongside her actual documented stage entrances, the gap between parody and reality is uncomfortably and almost indistinguishably small. People genuinely struggle to identify where one ended and the other began. And that specific problem is not Druski's fault. It is entirely and specifically the result of the choices she made about how to present herself publicly. And then, just days after the skit had blown up and the controversy was still fully active, she appeared at another Turning Point event and did the exact same thing. Same pyrotechnics, same entrance music, same theatrical production energy, same everything that the skit had just spent 183 million views making the subject of widespread ridicule. She wasn't moving on and refusing to let it define her. She was actively and repeatedly confirming the parody, giving it another life and then another after that. Every repeat of that entrance refreshed the skit's relevance and kept feeding a cycle she had every opportunity to step out of simply by making different choices. Now, Candace Owens has to be addressed specifically, because she is a significant and central reason why this entire story stays hot and keeps generating new energy. Candace and Charlie were genuinely close. After his death, Candace did not rally around Erika or position herself as a supportive figure helping to carry the legacy forward. She went the other direction with complete commitment and did it loudly and consistently. And here is where it gets legally interesting in a very specific way. Candace Owens has not stated on any documented record that Erika Kirk was responsible for her husband's death. What she does instead is imply She constructs trails of leading questions. She highlights what she describes as suspicious timing with very deliberate framing. She stacks implications so densely and so consistently that they begin functioning in the audience's perception as accusations, even though the explicit claim was never technically made. Then she steps back into a position of, "I'm just asking." That is not a random or organic communication style. That is a deliberately calibrated legal and rhetorical strategy. You maintain plausible deniability by never speaking the claim directly out loud. You ask the question in a way that causes the audience to connect the dots themselves, and once people construct the conclusion through their own reasoning process, it spreads with far more force and far more credibility than any direct accusation would achieve. And those YouTube thumbnails featuring Erika's image edited in disturbing and clearly manipulative ways, they were real, and they spread extensively. Screenshots circulated across every platform. The line between normal public commentary and territory carrying genuine legal risk kept getting blurrier in observable real time. But none of that received any meaningful direct confrontation in Erika's speech. She mentioned Candace's name. She characterized the accusations as lies, but she didn't methodically dismantle anything or provide specific counter-evidence for any specific claim. She communicated how hurt she was. And that is not a rebuttal. That is a performance of victimhood. And the audience watching had been watching long enough to notice the difference. So what was Druski doing while all of this was actively generating massive amounts of content and cultural conversation simultaneously? Absolutely nothing. No statement, no video, no Twitter thread, no quote tweet, no public back and forth engagement with any of it. He kept posting his normal content, kept reposting clips of people laughing at the skit with apparent and unbothered amusement, and then casually announced his hosting of the 2026 BET Awards, a significant and legitimate career milestone, right in the middle of the largest and most sustained controversy ever attached to his professional name, like it was just another Tuesday, like none of it was touching him in any meaningful way. And that silence, that completely deliberate and perfectly timed silence, was the coldest and most effective response available to him, because it made every other voice in the conversation sound exponentially louder by contrast. Here is the fundamental dynamic at work. The moment you formally respond to a comedian, you stamp the joke as real and confirmed. You authenticate it. You publicly acknowledge that it hit hard enough to require a formal response. You hand them the win with a bow on it. Every speech, every statement, every public moment Erika devoted to addressing the skit kept it alive and relevant long past the point where it would have naturally faded from the news cycle if left alone. Druski understood the mechanics of this dynamic completely and executed accordingly. He didn't need to defend the skit. Her own repeated stage entrances at subsequent Turning Point events defended it for him every single time she walked through those doors to the same music and the same pyrotechnics. While Erika was simultaneously managing PR fires, navigating legal conversation, and dealing with a wardrobe situation that trended independently for 3 consecutive days, Druski was stacking career milestones and reaching entirely new audiences who had never encountered his work before. The controversy didn't diminish him the way it was clearly intended to. It functioned as a launch ramp to crowds and platforms that wouldn't have discovered him through any conventional promotional path. That silence wasn't avoidance or weakness. It was professional positioning executed with confidence and intelligence. He understood something fundamental that a lot of the people coming at him never grasped. In the attention economy, the person who reacts and responds and escalates almost always takes the loss. Strip everything back to the core, and this was never really about the skit. The skit, the speech, the outfit, the whiteface claim, the legal threats, the presidential press conference moment, all of it is really about credibility. And the specific cracks in Erika Kirk's credibility were showing visibly and publicly long before Druski ever opened his camera app and started filming. She stated she had never dated seriously before Charlie, and then people went looking and found documented evidence of significant previous relationships. She claimed she didn't drink or engage with the party lifestyle. And then, clips from a reality show surfaced that looked like a direct contradiction of that specific claim. None of those individual revelations represents an automatically enormous scandal in complete isolation. But stacked together with everything else circulating simultaneously, the cumulative picture starts looking like someone who invested significant effort in constructing a carefully idealized version of themselves for public consumption, a persona calibrated for the camera and for a specific audience, while quietly hoping nobody would look closely enough to check the receipts. And people checked. Then there is the specific hand gesture, the one Druski made sure to recreate accurately in the skit, that struck people as jarringly inconsistent with the traditional values and God-first image she has been presenting publicly and consistently. Whether it was intentional or simply a careless and unconsidered moment in an unguarded second, people noticed it immediately, and it made the existing suspicion louder and more organized. The fundamental and honest truth of this situation is straightforward. Erika Kirk stepped into one of the most powerful and most established conservative political media machines in the country in the immediate aftermath of her husband's death. And the audience was not emotionally or practically ready for that transition. And there is a real possibility she wasn't fully ready either. The PR surrounding her has been consistently shaky. The optics have remained rough across multiple appearances and multiple controversies. The statements have kept backfiring rather than landing. And the question that keeps returning from people across the political spectrum, including people who genuinely loved and supported Charlie, is the same one every time. Who is this for? Charlie Kirk's movement was built specifically and fundamentally on Charlie Kirk, his particular personality, his specific debate style, his unique way of connecting with young conservative audiences and making political engagement feel accessible and energizing to people who might not have found it elsewhere. That specific combination does not transfer through succession. You cannot inherit a personality through organizational title or public positioning. And every attempt to frame Erika as the direct continuation of that specific legacy ends up making the legacy itself look less stable and making the attempt look more forced than the previous one. Zoom all the way out and look at this chain of events in its full and documented sequence. A comedian posts a skit. 183 million people watch it. The President of the United States uses a formal government press conference to advise his guest to pursue legal action against the comedian. The comedian responds by announcing a major career hosting opportunity at the BET Awards. The subject of the skit delivers a formal speech in an outfit that trends independently for 3 days, describes the parody as whiteface, and then appears at the next event doing the exact same thing the skit was lampooning. Druski never says a single public word in response to any of it, and walks away from the entire episode with more cultural relevance and more career momentum than he started with. When you have the president, a formal public speech, legal conversation, and multiple consecutive news cycles all simultaneously directed at one comedian, and the comedian remains completely and publicly silent throughout, the skit stops being the joke. The reaction itself becomes the joke. And that is the part that genuinely stings the most for everyone involved in constructing and executing that reaction. Erika Kirk had every available opportunity to let this fade. Instead, she leaned progressively harder into the performance. And Druski didn't even need to be in the room to watch it happen. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was Erika's response justified, or did she walk straight into her own trap? Hit like, subscribe, share this, and stay locked in for the next one.